And welcome back to episode number 22. 22 of Raise the Banner podcast. I'm one of your three co-hosts, as usual, Matt Couture here with JRM tonight, JR Mott, and Benny Ballgame Dearth, as usual. Uh, Ben is past his bedtime, but he decided he'll stay up past his old man bedtime tonight to record. So Ben, how you doing tonight?
Not feeling young apparently. Off the air apparently. I was born in 1849. Good year for the West Coast. That was the gold rush. Maybe I struck gold in a prior life, but no, things are good. Um, it's kind of a you know interesting weekend for you Sox fans out there. Got to hear a lot of boos. Um, but yeah, excited to get rolling.
JR, how about you?
Not too bad, man. It's just getting along with the off season, seeing how everything's going.
Just living?
Great. Huh?
Just living?
Just living. Just trying to find out when these coordinators will be announced for the Patriots, and
hopefully this week. Yeah. So
Breer said this week.
I'm another year older today, so
oh, that's right. It's your birthday today. Happy birthday, old man.
Yeah. So
one year closer to the nursing home.
Yeah, I'm a big 2'8", and
I got a corner suite picked out for you down the hall from me.
But you'll be long gone by the time I'm in a nursing home.
Holy shit!
Oh god! All right, let's get this going.
I got nothing. Kudos to you.
Let's get this going. All right, so we had Red Sox Winter Weekend this past weekend, just a few days ago. It was, I would probably say, a nightmare for Red Sox ownership. Not that Tom Werner or especially John Henry really care.
Is John Henry even there?
No.
No, John Henry had a scheduled conflict, and by scheduled conflict, I mean he's probably trying to close the deal of his $2 billion commitment to the PGA merger. That would be my guess of where he was, but yeah. So it was pretty much a disaster. Tom Werner was there. He played it off. He basically backtracked, on the full throttle, said that was a little bit more towards his own life personally, which is just a baffling excuse. Yeah, and he might be right. They're going to be full throttle investing in other things except for the Red Sox. Sam Kennedy came out, said that they're fully committed to winning. He even got a little bit of a little testy and kind of said, like, you're a liar if you say that the Red Sox ownership isn't committed to winning, all that type of nonsense. But then he specifically did say that he thinks that they will probably have a lower payroll than last year. A year after they reset the tax, they were under the tax at $225 million. We've already gone down that road of, what happened last year. So we're going to assume that they're at a $220 million, $222 million budget, roughly somewhere around there. That will limit them.
That'd be the ceiling, I would say. Yes, it wouldn't shock me if it was lower, but I would imagine it's not any higher than 220.
Yeah, so they're at 202 right now. That would leave them, let's say it's 220, that leaves them with 18 million in room. Obviously, they could then ship off, Jansen to save money. There's ways around it. If they wanted to, pay up and land a big fish like Montgomery or Snell, they could still absolutely do that and stay under that range. They would just have to then move someone like Jansen. Overall, though, what are your kind of thoughts post Winter Weekend on what you heard out of Sam Kennedy and Tom Werner, and where do you kind of stand on everything that's been with the Red Sox the past few weeks? We'll start with you, Ben.
It's hard to say that I'm surprised at this point. It's just been kind of more of the same. It's tough to hear that the organization is pinching pennies, but again, not surprised. I didn't watch it. I was away skiing anyway. Not that I had the ability to, even if I wanted to catch any of it. But I don't really know what their plan is. They want a lower payroll than last year. They don't have a ton of space left in order to do that. So I wonder if they're actually going to do something like sign a Montgomery or sign a mid-priced fourth outfielder type of guy, like a Duvall. Not that I don't even know if you'd consider him mid-priced. But yeah, it's disappointing. They still have, and not that a ton of guys have signed, because here we are. It's January 23rd. Pitchers and catchers report in 2 weeks, and 3 maybe major free agents have signed. Some names that are recognizable, obviously, but the baseball offseason crawls along as always at a snail's pace. So I suppose anything's possible, but it's just disappointing to see where they're at and that they don't really seem invested in in making any significant financial commitment to better the roster.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, that's I don't even know what to think. But Jay, what are you thinking here?
I'm just over it. Had faith going into this season, but everything that was said and then just nothing. So I really just don't give a fuck anymore with them. Until they sell the team, nothing good Red Sox.
Yeah, I mean, their big issue right now is they're supposedly, and this is what baffles me, and I've said it online a few times, is they're selling us on they've basically been throwing out whispers that they don't feel the team is ready and that they will go back to spending once these young guys are here and ready to go.
We've heard that multiple times.
Which first of all, it's ridiculous because there's no reason why you couldn't spend now knowing that you have a young crop of talent coming in that will be dirt cheap to counteract that. Absolutely no reason why you can't spend right now. Second of all, you fired the guy that brought in the players that you are now hedging and putting all your chips on to be cornerstone pieces. Okay, it's all right. We're going to wait for Teal. We're going to wait for Anthony. We're going to wait for Mayer till they're here. They'll be here next year. Then maybe we'll invest. Well, why the fuck did you fire the guy that you're relying on all these players that he brought in to be ready? That's the first thing that's been really pissing me off the last week or so thinking about it. But big picture, it's truly baffling how out of touch. I don't even want to say out of touch because I think they know just how stupid that ownership thinks Red Sox fans are. They think that we're just we're clueless of how this, how things should play out. The team is ready to the point where if they added a few pieces like they could have this offseason, like they still can, in theory, and they haven't. I mean, they don't even have to be like a New York Yankees spender. If they got into the 260 million range, 250 million range, that would mean that they could go out and add, what if they dropped Jordan Montgomery, Cody Bellinger, and I mean, you could probably fit someone else, and Jorge Soler or something like that.
They'd still be under the tax too, I think.
Well, no, not all three of them, but the tax is 237. But you could, if they just got into that 250, 260 range that these other big market teams are, that means that they could have then turned and added 2 elite pieces to the mix, and the team would look completely different right now if it had
They'd be a playoff
Montgomery
team if
and
they did
Bellinger.
Right, yeah, they would
So
be.
it's just,
and fans would actually be excited to buy tickets and go to games. And I think that's part of it. I'll just throw this out there. The part where you said that the Celtics, that the Sox ownership thinks that Sox fans are clueless or naive or dumb, whatever word you want to use. It's hard to say that it's fully wrong because they still get a decent number of people buying seats to every game. So they like whatever number of tickets they're actually selling, they still believe is sufficient that the product they're putting on the field isn't going to hurt their profit margin. Because if they felt that what they were putting on the field was actually affecting profit margins or affecting it significantly, then they'd be more willing to invest money and say, okay, like we got to put a better product on the field because we need more people in seats, buying food and drinks and merchandise, obviously on top of ticket prices. They must not feel that the issue with the number of people going to games is an issue yet.
You there?
Hello?
Yep, I'm here.
I lost you for a second.
It's my side. You guys are like, it sounds like.
No, but anyways, part of it is they have a big group of, away fans that come to Boston to see games. So that's why their prices are. I mean, the sales are still pretty decent, but I mean, their sales are down. Like ticket sales, attendance is down about 8 or 9%, which like doesn't sound monumental, but in a big picture, 8 or 9% in terms of profit margins for fans are a pretty good amount. The big picture is they're still profiting for like over $500 million a year. The Fenway Sports Group, I want to say, profited like the Red Sox made like a $500 million profit last year. So there's nothing that like the whole concept that I hear see people say like, oh well, don't go to the games, don't watch the games, don't do this. I think it's pretty. It's just dumb. Like if you don't want to watch it, go ahead. But like to be like, oh, you're not allowed to complain about the team because you watch them and you're just contributing to it. And the real answer is like if attendance can be down 9% and ownership doesn't give a shit, it being down 12 or 13% isn't going to change anything either.
No, that's why I think it would take a significant drop for them to feel like they have to put better product on the field because ticket sales are getting to a point where it's actually affecting profit margins. Whereas, what did you say it was? 8-9% isn't.
If they're making 500 mil, like if they're making 500 mil off this, if that's an accurate number, what I saw, like they're never going to come close. Like unless attendance dropped like astronomically, like down like 30-40%, which will never happen. They're never going to like lose. They're never going to lose money off of this. At this point, it's basically just a money pit for Red Sox ownership the past few years, where they're not putting much into it. They're putting just barely enough to put out a semi-competitive baseball team, and they're not going to do what it's going to take to win. I think that's kind of clear right now. And so then it turns to Breslow has to work from within those margins. So we could sit back and talk about the big picture and the big issue for hours and stuff with Red Sox ownership, but we'll kind of branch a little bit into what they need to do to work within this budget. So what are your thoughts? Let's say they have about 18 million in room to spend. How do you want them to approach this? The rest of the offseason in terms of what pieces to add, projected obviously contracts, maybe trading Jansen, stuff like that. Do you have any preference of how you want them to kind of move things in the direction to get themselves at least in a spot to be like a mid-80s win team?
Trade Jansen, sign Soler and Jordan Montgomery.
Yeah.
Would you stay under? I see. That's the thing. I don't think you'd stay on. You wouldn't stay under that 220 price for that.
Well, how much? Well, so if you trade Jansen,
You'd
that
be
drops
adding
you.
like.
What does that drop you down to if you trade Jansen? 186.
So if that's it.
No,
so if you got someone to take his full, if you got someone to take his full salary, it'd take you down to 186.
Yeah. Okay. So that presumably gives you 34 million to play with. Yeah. So I mean, if you get rid of Jansen, I mean, because presumably
you could fit Montgomery and like Duvall.
Yeah, you probably
Or
could.
Montgomery and Turner.
Probably, maybe Turner. So I proposed it. I threw out the idea of you can give Turner the same deal structure he had last year, in which like you give him a 1 year $8 million base.
With a
So it's
player
like
option?
his this yeah, well his payroll salary this year is lower, and then give him either a buyout of like 4 million in a player option or a player option.
But
And
what did he make?
if he just opts out, then we have 4 million of him on the payroll next year, which
What did they?
is not the biggest deal.
What did they pay him last year?
I'm pretty sure he got 8 million.
Oh, I just found it.
And
Hold
then he had a
on.
$6 million buyout.
So his prior deal, so he got bought out of his Dodgers contract in 2022, and then he signed the 2-year deal with a buyout. It doesn't say how much money he made. Oh yeah, here it is. Hold on. So the Red Sox paid him It was 9.3 million last year, and then they had
how much was a buyout?
6.7. So because they're paying him that, the buyout is on this year, so they have to pay him that money this season. I just don't see how you pay Justin Turner the same amount of money, because he's not going to take a $3 million base salary because the Red Sox are already paying him $6.7 million. That doesn't make sense for him.
You would give him another. So their current salary.
But if they do it right, but if they do that right, then you're paying him $15 million this year.
No, okay, but no matter what, you're paying him 6.7.
Correct, which is why I don't think. But if you offer him the same deal, in order to get him to sign here, you'd have to increase. Right, like you're still paying him that, but it doesn't make sense for them to pay another $9 million on top of what they're already paying him, when you could probably go get somebody who will offer similar production. Like, if he's fully healthy, Adam Duvall gives you the same production for less money.
You have to put the 6.7 aside, because whether it's Duvall or Turner or Soler, that 6.7 is there. So if you sign Duvall for 7 million, it's 6.7% and plus 7 million for Duvall for that, let's just say, DH spot, no matter what. For Turner himself, like, so you can't even like factor in the 6.7 in this at this point, because it's already there. It's basically just, it's like they split the cap. It's like in football where they split the cap.
Yeah, I know how it works.
Almost like a void year. So you can't even kind of factor that in. It would basically just be like getting Turner. The way I proposed it was an $8 million base plus a 4, and then so he'd make that 6.7 from the previous year, but then he'd get an $8 million new deal this year, and then next year he can either have a $10 million player option or a $4 million buyout. So in that world, we paid him what, 6.7 plus 9 this year. For last year, so it's 15.7.
Well, it was it was 9.3. They paid him $16 million for 2023.
Okay, so 16. So if he came back and opted out again, we would pay him 12 in total. And that turns into a 2-year, what, $28 million deal? Like, that's pretty damn reasonable for what he did, what he produced, assuming he put up relatively similar numbers.
But if you're talking about an organization that's trying to shed salary, they're not going to pay Justin Turner that much money when they're already paying him. I get they're going to try to find somebody who offers the same production but won't cost them as much money. No, I get that they're still paying
what
Turner.
They're already paying him is irrelevant here.
No, I understand that, but they're trying to shed salary. So if they could get Adam Duvall for $7 million and Justin Turner is going to cost you 8 or 9, they're not going to sign Justin Turner. They'll sign Adam Duvall for less money.
Oh, I mean
that's what
sure,
I'm saying. I'm not saying that the 6.7 is a deterrent for signing Turner. I just think that because they're trying to shed salary, they're like, why pay Turner when you can get similar production for less money out of a guy like Duvall?
I mean, yes, and that's what they're battling is like what is Soler at $14 million a year, or is it Turner at $10 to $12 million a year, or is it Duvall at $8 million a year? It's like how do they want to which of those players matches their value more, and what's the best fit? I think that's what they're kind of battling right now. And that's why they're kind of, I don't think they had jumped on anything recently, is they're kind of just looking around and saying, we're waiting until the final prices of these players come in, and then we'll make a final jump at, whatever player at the time being. Where they're just kind of sitting back and saying, we'll wait it out. And because clearly fucking Scott Boras doesn't give a shit about the timeline of things. He's willing to take these things down to the wire. But they need to do something. And so I think the best route for them would, if they signed Montgomery, like most of the fan base would be like, it would go from an uproar straight down to a simmer at max.
Yeah, because they actually made a legitimate commitment. So money wise, I think that, just to add this in, I know that there was some rumblings about Yoshida being on the market. Besides him and Jansen, based on players that you can move that I don't think become detrimental to the roster, those two make the most sense, and that's $34 million between the two of them for 2024.
I would be shocked if they moved Yoshida.
I mean, I would, but other than Jansen, nobody else really makes sense. I mean, maybe Chris Martin because he's older. I think he's 37, 38. Not that Jansen's young; he's 36.
No, but you can't move both Jansen and Martin. I mean, they're going to have to work within Jansen. Jansen's like the only. They're going to have to work with knowing that Jansen's like the only movable big salary at this point, probably. So, like max budget, and this, if they got someone to take Jansen's full deal, would be, what was it, like 34-ish million to spend.
Yeah, so if you move Jansen by himself, assuming that they're operating with a $220 million budget, then yeah, that gives them $34 million to play with, which is essentially, if they're willing to go the number of years, it would be Jordan Montgomery and somebody like Adam Duvall or JD Martinez,
which is certainly doable. So Jordan Montgomery is a little tricky because I think his option one, and this could be why both Snell and Montgomery haven't signed. His option one for Montgomery, from what we've heard, is to go back to Texas. The problem with Texas is they are waiting on their new TV deal. They don't know when that's coming, and they don't know how much they're going to be able to spend. They seem unlikely to be able to commit to what Montgomery wants. I've also then heard that option 2, preference-wise, would be Boston. Boston supposedly doesn't want to go as many years as he wants. So the question becomes, like, as the days trickle on and we get closer to spring training, if the Rangers are saying, okay, we're out, and Boston saying, yeah, we're interested, but we'll give you 3 years, $75 million. How many other options does he have that are teams that are going to be offering more than that? Could it be New York? Sure, maybe. I don't know, either New York team. I'd have to imagine the Dodgers are done or close to it. But
at this point, I
like
would not say I wouldn't say that they're done.
I wouldn't count them out.
They just keep pulling money out. They just keep pulling money out of their ass and
adding
throwing it at
another
people.
$25 million a year. I could see them like adding, finishing touches, certainly, like another reliever or like
they just delay the salary for 10 years.
They can just do what they did with Ohtani, pay him $1 million or $2 million a season, and then defer money over 10 years.
Yeah, I mean they could. I mean, that's why like nothing's impossible. Obviously, I'm just kind of obviously going by a little bit of like realm of logic that they're not gonna go after Montgomery.
Well, they don't need him anymore. There's no spot really in the rotation.
That's the other thing. And so like the Rangers could. So Kershaw looks like he might need a new home. He's from Texas. He could go home to the Rangers. And if the Rangers are just focused on a playoff run, Kershaw will be ready mid-year. Kershaw will be a significantly cheaper option to Montgomery. But I mean, big picture for Montgomery is, there's, for as much as like we're pissed right now as fans, there's a chance that like the Sox kind of back themselves into a nice deal. And we'll like give them credit because they ended up getting the guy, but like they would have kind of, I don't want to say
had to do it
to him. Well, no, it's because if they had to do it, they would have done it by now. But like, you know what I mean? Like they kind of, I don't want to say lucked into the guy, but like they backed themselves into him. They didn't like go after him. They just kind of kept sitting back, and Montgomery came back and fell into
and
their
then let
laps,
them come.
And they were like, okay, fine, we'll take him. So that's like the kind of the hope right now.
Just get it done. Just sign the deal.
So if they went Montgomery and Duvall, like fans would be relatively happy. Like for the most part, I think they would be maybe not thrilled, but like
I think they'd be lukewarm. I think they'd be happy that the Red Sox finally made a significant move. But you figure, right, like the Red Sox have said that they're not going to go more than 2 years, although there's been some rumblings that maybe they'd consider that for Montgomery. I don't know if there was any teeth to that rumor. But if they're not willing to go more than 2 years, I mean, I get at some point Montgomery has to either he has to make some kind of a decision. He's got to have multiple offers. But I can't imagine a scenario where Jordan Montgomery's best option and best offer is a 2-year, $60 million offer from the Red Sox. Or 2 years, and you know what I mean? Like,
not that.
No, but you figure on a short-term deal, they'd have to go. Well, although they've shown a reluctancy to spend to make a ton of to make offers. Who was it that signed with the Dodgers? Teoscar Hernandez. The Red Sox were offering him, I think, 14 a year on their offer to him. So maybe their offer is 2 and 56 million or something like that to Montgomery, because you figure over a long-term deal, he's probably going to you presume he'd get somewhere in the neighborhood of like mid-20s a season, where on a short-term deal, you might have to go a little higher than that. I just don't see how that's his, I don't see a scenario where that's his best offer and best option is to come here on a 2-year deal.
My guess is he's going to sign for like 125 somewhere. If things fall down, I could see maybe like the Red Sox backing into like a 3-year deal with a vesting fourth if he hits, 160 innings pitched in the final year or something like that. So maybe it's something like that. But I mean, going into the offseason, we all kind of felt like, Yamamoto was option 1, but like we wouldn't have called it very likely that the Sox got him, obviously. And so we were kind of saying, okay, if Yamamoto's off the board, how do you want them to approach it? And if they sign Montgomery and Duvall, factoring in obviously the trade of Verdugo out, O'Neill in, Grissom in, Sale out, Giolito in. If they added Montgomery and Duvall to this, I think we would be kind of saying this isn't an A+ off season, but it's a C+ B- off season.
Yeah, and they could be
maybe B-.
And with that roster, they're a middling playoff team, which at least that's better than last year.
Yeah, they'll be battling for a wild card team, and then at that point, maybe they start off well, and it's mid-July, and ownership kind of says, okay, and this is what's baffling to me, is not only are they staying below the tax, that would be one thing, they're staying well below the tax. If they could get up to 235 or even 230, that would give them so many more options of how, paths that they could go.
Yeah, they just
maybe if they're at 220 at the deadline.
Yeah, at this point, I just don't think they just don't want to spend. They don't want to invest the money. Based on these decisions. Yeah, based on their decision making, they've basically said this team's not good enough for us to legitimately invest in big pieces. That's basically their message to the fan base is we're waiting for our young guys, which Heimblum better have been right on those guys because ownership's going to look somehow even worse than they do now if those young guys do not pan out either in the fashion they expect or in the time frame that they expect or both. Kyle T obviously looks pretty legitimate, same with Roman Anthony, but say they get hurt or they have setbacks as they progress through the farm system, or
what if Kyle Teal breaks his leg, or
right,
they're putting injured.
They're putting all their eggs. They're putting all their eggs in three baskets, and basically saying that the young core has to develop. The young core has to develop into a good core major leaguers for them to invest. That's just such a weird philosophy to follow. And if they're wrong, I mean, ownership's going
to especially when they fired the guy that brought those guys in.
Yeah, ownership's going to have even more egg on their face if some combination of those three guys don't pan out, and we're sitting here in 2025 or even 2026. I'm going to guess that all three of them are probably 2025, maybe 2026. Depends on how quickly Teal progresses. I think he's the youngest of the three. So, in the farm system, I know Mayer is physically, legitimately younger than Teal, but there's still a year, hopefully only away. But we could be sitting here in a year and a half from now, and we're still in the same position because those guys didn't progress the way that ownership and player development thought they would. And then they're gonna look even worse.
Or even 12 months from now, where all of them are on the cusp of being ready, but we don't know truly what they are yet. What if a year from now, Teal came up in September, and Roman Anthony and Mayer are played well, had a good year. They're expected to be ready maybe June. They want him to get another, a little bit, a couple more months in AAA. Are they not gonna spend next offseason because they still don't know for sure what those guys are? That.
Probably.
That's why I said it's stupid. That's why I said it's so dumb. Is because if they believed in these guys that much, which that they're claiming to, they're putting all these chips in the basket. They could go out and sign a couple big names, knowing that the guys that they supposedly believe in will have a 6 to 7 year window of, cheap, under control play for them.
Right.
Never mind the fact that you're going to have Casas that's under control. Duran's under control for the next 5 years. Bello's under control. Houck is still under control for another 4 or 5 years. It's just, I don't know. I'm just frustrated. But let's shift gears. let's shift gears into a little bit of hockey. I want to give JR the floor. Sorry about that. The Boston Bruins, they have been they're chugging along, and they've found their footing after a little bit of a stumble for a couple weeks. They just went to Winnipeg, and kind of put a little bit of a beat down in Winnipeg. Was it last night? Yeah, last night, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Last night they a little bit of a beatdown. I know as the trade deadline kind of comes up a little bit, there's a lot of question marks of, should they invest in this team because or are they just overperforming? Is it worth it? They don't have a first round pick this year. They don't have a second round pick next year. Jay, I'm curious your thoughts on, the current standing of the team. What do you think they should do? What do you think that they will do in terms of maybe possible additions? And, I know we talked about before the season of what we expected for this team, which was, maybe a borderline playoff team. Obviously, they're the number one seed in their conference right now. What are you feeling right now with the big bad Bruins?
Give me 1 second. I'm just trying to bring up Hockey DB really quick because I want to make sure, because I haven't been able to watch the last few games, so I want to make sure I'm saying the right stuff. So,
okay, and while he's doing that, I know it's obviously
Coyle
way
had
too
a
early.
fucking beauty last night.
I know it's early to talk about this stuff, but as of right now, the Bruins would match up with the Tampa Bay Lightning in the first round of the playoffs. Obviously, there's just about half the season to go, but as it currently stands, Tampa is the second wild card. Looks like
really love that, but
looks like it's kind of a five-way race. The Red Wings, Lightning, Devils, Islanders, and Caps are all within 3 points of each other. Those are the first five wildcard teams. And then it kind of drops off. You've got the Penguins are the only other wildcard team above 500, sitting at 48 points. But yeah, you're probably, not a great first round matchup, but if you get past your first round matchup, you're probably looking at, obviously Tampa's only 1 point out of third place, but Florida's at least trending to be the number 2 seed in the Atlantic.
All right, so let me read this off really quick. All right, so we're sitting at, okay, my internet's taking forever. All right, so I'm gonna go by players first before we do anything regarding the team, like itself, like its win record and everything like that. Your top 5 in scoring this year for the Boston Bruins is probably not what many expected. Number 1 and number 2, more than likely, yes. 3 through 5, nobody probably expected. Your number 1 scoring player on the Boston Bruins, of course, is David Pastrnak. He's got 30 goals, 37 assists, 67 points. He has a plus-minus 12. He has 35 penalty minutes, points. He has like a point per game average of 10, which is pretty crazy. Second in scoring is
penny so far. I said he's been worth every penny so far.
Yeah. Brad Marchand. Other than a couple like lazy moments Pastrnak had, like at the end of the month last month, I really don't care. He's worth every cent. Brad Marchand, second in scoring, 21 goals, 23 assists, 44 points, plus-minus of +5, penalty minutes 47. Obviously, his penalty minutes are going to be higher because it's Brad Marchand. Your third in scoring this year, which I guarantee nobody expected, is Charlie Coyle with 17 goals, 21 assists, 38 points as a third-line center, which is nuts. Charlie McAvoy has 6 goals, 24 assists for 30 points, a +11. And if you would have told me in the free agency or before the season started that James Van Riemsdyk would have 7 goals, 22 assists, and 29 points, I would have laughed in your face. He was a $1 million 1-year signing. I thought he was going to be like a third-line, fourth-line plug-and-play guy, vet-type player, net front that we needed on the power play. I would have never expected that this dude is putting up the numbers he is. But then again, played in Boston when he was a kid. Should have been a Bruin from the beginning of his career. We see how this turned out. He's finally here. We'll look at the team stats now. So goalies. Jeremy Swayman has games played. 26. He has wins. He has 15 wins, 3 losses, 7 overtime losses. He has a goals against average of 2.31, a save percentage of 9.3, save average 744, save attempts 744, saves 687, goals allowed 57. Linus Ullmark, who's coming back from battling a few injuries, 14 wins, 3 losses, 2 overtime losses. He has a 280, and a save percentage of 913. Like, this team is still really good. They had a rough patch at the end of December, beginning of January, but the team's still really good. If I had to guess if they did at the trade deadline, I think they'd probably add a depth defenseman and probably another scoring winger because the centers look decent. I would have to say maybe another winger and then a depth defenseman, like a 7th defenseman, or more than likely what might happen is they bump Derek Forbort to the 7th defenseman and they bring in somebody who can take it. But I don't know. I mean,
I don't see them investing too heavy.
That's what I'm saying is I don't think it's going to be like heavy investments. If they go with the winger, I think it'll probably be a bottom 6 guy who can give you a couple goals down the stretch and can be there to get active in the playoffs if they make the playoffs. This team should make the playoffs, but things happen. And then another defenseman, and I'm not saying like a top 6 defenseman or a top 4 defenseman, but somebody that can, if you need to give Derek Forbort nights off, which he hasn't played the best this year, he is, despite his plus-minus rating, +10, because this team scores so many goals. He hasn't looked that good, and also has been injured and battled injury. But I don't know who they go after personally by name, because on trade deadline day, if it's a buyer's market, prices are going to be high. If it's a seller's market, it won't. But I would much rather them go after the big names in free agency and then just build around that.
I think most likely they're going to be like...
What?
You there?
Yeah, I'm here now. Sorry, my internet's wigging out today.
Yeah, I think the big picture, they're probably going to in that like mid-tier range where they don't have to give up a 1st or 2nd round pick. Someone that they can bring in depth pieces to help out. Like you said, maybe score another goal or two. What's been most impressive to me is Sweeney had an outstanding offseason. The players that he brought in kind of hit in every way. Like you said, James Van Riemsdyk coming in it's turned out.
Well, there he goes.
Yeah, so while he reboots, perhaps, it's definitely been refreshing seeing how they've played this year. They are solidly sitting atop the Eastern Conference, and I think we had talked about this in the offseason. We weren't really sure what to expect, right? Bergeron retires. He's repeated that he has no interest in coming out of retirement, that he's at peace with his decision. Obviously, Krejci's gone. And we weren't really sure, how things were going to transition to new captainship. But, they really, are they the juggernaut they were last year? No. But last year I don't want to say they overachieved, but that was their ceiling. Like, as good as that team could have been, that's exactly what they did. They performed to their max all year. Obviously, they came up short. They fell short in the first round of the playoffs. Not to open up old torch salt on old wounds, right? But the team that we're seeing this year is, I'd have to double check the standings, but in terms of regulation losses, are they the only team that doesn't have double-digit regulation losses?
Or 29-8-9.
So, yeah, they're the only team that doesn't have double-digit regulation losses. And they have the Canucks, Jets, and Avalanche are your 30-win teams. So they're doing as good as we could have hoped, given the uncertainty that they found, that this team had. Obviously, no Bergeron, you have new leadership. So it's refreshing to see. It's nice to see that they're performing at such a high level, knowing full well that it could have been bad. Like, people, they were, on the radio, on TV. People weren't sure if the Bruins were going to be a legitimately competitive team. There were some people that were talking about how, they might be in the middle of the pack in the East, and that a good year would be, winning a first-round playoff game before they lost to one of the East elites. And, here they are again, solidly sitting atop the Eastern Conference. And, they stumbled a little bit. Maybe it humbled them, but they seem to have righted the ship, and, they look good.
All right. So this is what I'm going to say. I'll finish it off on my end. Like I said, I don't want if they buy in the in the trade deadline, I don't want it to be like super heavy draft capital involved. We don't have first round picks. We don't have a second round pick this year, and our first round pick for next year. So it's a conditional first that we traded Detroit for Bertuzzi. If we ended up in the top 10 this year, it would become a 2025 first, and we would keep our 2024 first round pick. But you see that's not happening, so they're going to get the 2024 first this year. If they don't buy at the deadline and just get some depth pieces, right now the center market, you're going to need to get a first-line center no matter what. As soon as free agency opens, they have the second or third most cap space in the league as of July 1st, 2024. If they're going to go after anybody and they want to go center, you might have to pay up what Vancouver wants, match the offer sheet. If you can get Elias Pettersson to Boston for 7 years, you're banking like hardcore on the future of this team. He's 25 years old. He can play center and left wing, and he's behind Quinn Hughes. He's the best player that Vancouver has. They more than likely won't let him leave because they're trying to build for the future. They're number one in the league right now for a reason. Vancouver is a really good team this year. But if you can't get Elias Pettersson, I'd say Elias Lindholm. Grab Elias Lindholm, make him your first-line center. I know people are going to say he's not first-line center quality, but you put him on a line with David Pastrnak and Brad Marchand, anything happens. Like,
they have the ability to bring people up from that.
He doesn't have to drive the line. He just has to be there to win faceoffs and help. He doesn't have to be the driver of that line. Patrice Bergeron didn't have to be the driver of that line when they were called the perfection line, when Cassidy had them all three together. You just need somebody that can create. You just need somebody that can create chances, and Elias Lindholm would do that. And then if they want to grab a winger, they really need to re-sign Jake DeBrusk, because Jake DeBrusk is fucking back. If you haven't seen him lately, he's back. He had a slow start to the season, but this kid is back. But I'd re-sign. I would definitely go out of my way to give Swayman that 8-year deal, lock him up for the rest of his career as a Bruin. lock Jake DeBrusk up to like a 6-year contract, 4 to 6 year contract, and then you still have money if you want to trade somebody. You still have money. You can go out and you can get somebody like Teuvo Teravainen if you wanted to, Jakob Vrana, Jakob Silverberg, Vladimir Tarasenko. He's old, but Jonathan Marchessault is going to be a free agent. He's older too, but he can play both right and left wing, and he was a damn good piece for that Vegas that won the Stanley Cup last year. Alexander Winberg, he can be a depth center. He can be a bottom 6 center if you need him to. Anthony Beauvillier, he's playing for Chicago right now. All names like that, I mean, you could grab, but I'd prefer them just to get depth at the deadline that won't cost extreme amounts of money compared to, what they did last year to go all in. But, I mean, if they do want to go kind of all in on a winger this year, I wouldn't mind Connor Garland coming home to Boston. So.
Yeah, I mean, big picture, like, I don't think they'll go all in. I don't think they should. I'll just finish it up where I think I mentioned it before, but Sweeney has been arguably, I'm not huge into hockey and act like, I know the in-depths of every team, but Sweeney has to be have had one of the best last 12 months of a GM in the entire NHL. I think he nailed the trade deadline last year. As much as they came up short, the pieces were outstanding adds. And this offseason, he hit every button to the point where they didn't have much room, and they even had the opportunity to trade a goalie and make it a little easier on themselves to add other pieces, and he still didn't do that. And he still managed to add the complementary pieces to put this team in a position that they're in now, and maybe they're overperforming. But I mean, like I said, I think they're going to ride it out, see how it kind of plays out. Maybe add a depth piece or two, but either way, it's kind of exciting. We all thought that they would be kind of shitty this year. Not shitty, but mediocre.
I wouldn't say I didn't think they'd be shitty. I said I don't think they'll be what they were last year. I think they'd still be competitive.
That's why I rephrased to like.
But I didn't think they'd be as good as they are right now.
Yeah. So I'm excited to see how they play out, but we'll transition and we'll finish this up. Let's get into some Patriots. We'll talk some Celtics next week. They're the best team in the league. They should win. Blah 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 blah. they'll add at the deadline. They should win it all. The New England Patriots, obviously, we talked last week. They hired Gerard Mayo. Currently, we finally have a little bit more insight of who the potential coordinators can be. I'm open. I think I know Ben's answer, and I would probably be able to guess your answer, JR. But where are you guys feeling on the two coordinator, offensive and defensively, and just kind of how are you feeling with how these, based off like the reported interviews, of what direction Gerard Mayo seems to be going?
So I'll start with defense. I had mentioned this to Matt earlier today, that I've settled on wanting them to promote defensive line coach DeMarcus Covington to defensive coordinator. My take on that is, and it's funny because Matt and I chatted last night, much to his dismay, about like what the Patriots are actually doing. And what's kind of nice to see is that they're conducting full searches, and not to say that Bill made incorrect decisions, but we never conducted full searches like this when he was the coach. So it's nice to see that, it's a little bit different. They're bringing a bunch of guys in. So it's nice to see that it is different, and hopefully they'll come to the conclusion on who the right guys are. So it's nice to see that. But for Covington, for me, the defensive line has been the strongest part of this defense for the better part of the last 3 years. at least. And he's obviously a driving force behind that. So, given that that's been a staple, the defense as a whole has been a staple. I think, promoting him and then backfilling that position makes the most sense. He's well respected within the organization. The defensive guys love him. So him being able to run the defense, I think, makes the most sense. Offensively, I had a little bit of a soft spot for Shane Waldron just because of what he had done in Seattle. He was a guy that, you kind of read about, but he wasn't like the hot name, right? People, and us especially, we'd always talked about wanting, the next, the next fruit off the tree of either, McVay, Shanahan style of offense, right? Which the guy at the top of that list is Zach Robinson. So, I'm kind of with that as being, our direction offensively. Obviously, he's been the pass game coordinator in LA. The one thing that I kind of stick on, and this isn't a preference issue, is with the volatility with Sean McVay, right? He's already talked about, maybe he already wants to step away from coaching, that, maybe he doesn't want to leave LA because McVay, he's like, yeah, like I'm out of here in the next couple of years. And, he wants a shot at head coach, which is, most of these younger hotshot offensive and defensive coordinators, the ultimate goal is head coach, right? So, if he feels he's got a better path to head coach in LA, maybe he sticks around. He's still at the top of the list. There's other guys. I don't really think there's a shot of landing him, but Dan, is it Pitcher or Pritchard, the quarterback coach from Cincinnati? You presume that he's probably the heir apparent to be the offensive coordinator in Cincinnati. So, if I had my choice between Cincinnati and New England offensive coordinator right now, I'd be taking Cincinnati personally, but that's just me. But somebody like that, I really liked what Shane Waldron did. I thought, he was, not necessarily that like younger guy, but a guy, I think he's in his mid 40s, so he's got a little bit of, he's got a little bit of mix of both. He's got, veteran experience. He's not one of these guys that's in his mid 30s who's just, had one of the meteoric rises through the ranks. For me, it's Zach Robinson, but I'm less like pigeonholed specifically on who I want, but Zach Robinson still sits at the top of the list, but we'll see who they end up landing, but somebody like Robinson.
Yeah, how about you?
I've been pounding the table for the last 3 months that we've been doing this, 4 months. And I've been saying the whole entire time, Zach Robinson's my number one pick that I want for the offensive coordinator position. And I think he's going to get it. From the report I read, Breer's Sports Illustrated article today, he said it sounds like we're going to get our coordinators this week, more than likely. But we know Breer, how he can be wrong sometimes. But it sounds like all things are pointing to Zach Robinson becoming the offensive coordinator. And then I think if everything goes right, I think Nick Caley is going to come back to be the passing game coordinator and the tight ends coach. And I think, like we were talking, I'll use Ben's little quote here off the record the other day. We were talking, and you're like, oh yeah, he's probably like gonna promise, the chance, like, hey, like if Zach Robinson gets a head coaching job, you're gonna be the next man up. Like, you'll go from passing game coordinator to offensive coordinator, and then get your shot in the future to become a head coach as well. I know people say like, oh, Nick Caley, he was a Patriot already before, same offense, blah, blah. It's different. You go to the McVay system, you learn if everything I've read is right, the amount that he's learned and that he knows in a year, in such short time, is pretty massive. I think he would be a decent coordinator even after Zach Robinson. If we hire Zach Robinson and Zach Robinson gets a head coaching job, I think Nick Caley would be a very good offensive coordinator, maybe if not a home run offensive coordinator, because he would have time to develop under Zach Robinson as well for a little bit, for a couple of years. So that's 3 years in a Shanahan-style offense, or Shanahan-McVay ecosystem. If it's not Zach Robinson, or Nick Caley. I hope they kind of reach out to Clint Kubiak in San Francisco, or this name's been thrown on a little bit. I like it. Eric Bieniemy. He brings the Andy Reid West Coast style offense, and he mixes in air raid like you see with Cliff Kingsbury, who's also a nice little mention because he could be an option.
They need to interview. I believe they need to interview one minority coach for the OC. So we've heard these three names. Shane Waldron also interviewed.
I'm good on him.
Chicago job. But they will, I believe, have to interview at least one minority coach.
Correct.
Not that I'm not saying this in the sense of just to get past that rule. I would be interested to at least bring in Bieniemy to talk with him and see. I don't know if he's certainly not my number one option, but if he was the answer, I wouldn't be upset. The other option that seems to be heading that way is Brian Johnson in Philly. I think he's kind of getting scapegoated out of Philly for reasons I really don't even understand.
All right, man, that offense was trash with him. They started out hot and then they kind of fell off.
The defense was also like the entire Eagles team fell off over the last month and a half of the season.
Oh, the defense sounds like a Matt Patricia disaster class once again.
No, the defense was trash before Matt Patricia too, and then Matt Patricia had to came in and work with the defense. And I'm not even defending Matt Patricia, but people are putting blame on him.
They fired Desai, didn't they?
Yeah, they fired Desai, and Patricia just signed a 1-year deal there, so he's not under contract. But anyways, Brian Johnson, he would be someone I would at least want to talk to. Obviously, we've talked about Wes Welker. Mayo said yesterday morning that he can't confirm any visit for Wes Welker, so I don't know if they're just not considering that path. But he is certainly someone that is of at least a little bit of interest.
I think he would just need a little bit more experience because he doesn't call plays in Miami, anything like that. He's just a wide receivers coach.
Yeah, no, I agree. So that's what I was kind of getting to. I think it was today. Yeah, the same. You mentioned Brazaric earlier. In a perfect world, I would love Robinson as the OC, Caley as the pass game coordinator and tight ends coach, and they also bring in a veteran guy offensively as a mentor. Hell, Belichick doesn't get this Atlanta job. I would be very okay if that's Josh McDaniels, just to be that kind of advisor offensively.
I don't think McDaniels would come back. I think he would sit out a year maybe.
He can't.
Oh, that's right. No, he has to work because he's getting paid by the Raiders, right?
Correct. Right. He has to take a job. If he's offered a job and he bypass it, the Raiders can say, "Screw you, I'm not paying you."
He could
go. So he has to work.
Yeah, if he doesn't get an OC job, I would imagine he'll get a senior offensive assistant, analyst, QB coach, some kind, advisor to a head coach somewhere. On the Bill Belichick thing, just to bring it up, it wasn't Breer, somebody from The Athletic reported that I guess the head coaching search in Atlanta is pointing that Bill Belichick is losing momentum as being the favorite for that job.
I wonder why.
So I think the front office doesn't want him.
And which is interesting because as of today, no other team has interviewed him. So it just begs the question, if Bill doesn't get the Falcons job, is he done?
I think so. Unless the Chargers.
Well, the Chargers I think are hard on Harbaugh. I think that's coming towards the end. I think Harbaugh is going to get that job.
The Chargers are going to go either Harbaugh I think they're going to
Vrabel.
consider Vrabel, and I heard
They
Pete
interviewed
Carroll
Vrabel.
wants that job.
Who?
Pete Carroll
Matt.
is interested in that
Carroll,
job.
yeah.
I don't. Belichick
Yeah.
isn't going West Coast, so I think Belichick's only options are Atlanta, maybe Washington. I don't know if they're interested or not.
I think
don't know.
Washington's gonna get Ben Johnson.
Yeah, it very much could. But if it's not Atlanta, he might be done, which would be kind of
crazy
to think about.
Or he sits out a year, does TV, comes back.
I don't know. Yeah, but you're 70. You at least sit out a year. You're 73 years old. Like,
Dude, I mean, if it means he can break Shula's record, I think he would do it.
Yeah, and if he doesn't get a head coaching job, he's still getting paid by the Pats plus whatever TV money he gets offered.
Yeah. So what will be interesting? What will be interesting is he'll be. Now we don't know what agreement they came up to with, but let's just say he's getting paid some money with the Pats. If he doesn't get a head coaching job, and he doesn't take and he sits out the year, is he eligible for the money from Kraft?
No, he's not. It would be like a Josh McDaniels thing. He has to get work.
That's what I'm saying.
Those are in contracts. Like, the only way they get paid is if they find another job.
I wonder if there's a world.
Bill Belichick is defensive coordinator. Bill Belichick is Patriots defensive coordinator.
No, just if there was a world where he would, if he doesn't get a job, where he would kind of work to like help Mayo.
Like the
not that I don't want it to happen. I just want them to
move on altogether. I don't envision a scenario where he's ever in a.
I don't think Kraft's going to take him back.
No, I mean, Kraft will bring him back. He'll sit up in the
box,
in the owner's box, wave to the crowd. He'll give his curmudgeon smile, if you want to call it that. They'll put him in there. He'll be a Patriots Hall of Famer. The whole, that whole song and dance, but he'll be a public figurehead. I don't think he'd ever work for the Patriots again, unless when Jonathan Kraft takes over, assuming he wants to take over full ownership. I can't imagine he doesn't. He's team president and basically runs the show because his father's old and probably doesn't do half of what he used to. Unless Jonathan has a sterling relationship with Bill and wants to bring him back as an advisory capacity, I can't see him coming back and working for Robert.
Fair. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't bet on it, but I mean, back to like the big the main topic. Like, I don't know how Josh McDaniels would fit in here if we hired like a Robinson, because their schemes don't really match.
He's already a QB coach too. Robinson's a QB coach already too. So.
Yeah. So, I don't know if it would really be McDaniels or what, but I would like to see them, even if it's Robinson. I know he has some pass game coordinator position, but the fact is he hasn't called plays. He did a couple in the preseason last year for LA, but that's about it.
I mean, to be fair, Brian Callahan didn't call plays for Cincinnati, and he just got a head coaching job.
Correct, but then he's probably, I don't know if he's going to be calling plays again. Like, neither did Mayo, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if he's going to be calling plays again in.
Yes, but I don't think that whether you call plays or not, I don't think has any bearing on whether or not you're qualified to be a coordinator.
No. It's not whether it's qualified or not. It's not that I think Robinson's unqualified because he hasn't. I'm just saying that I would like, even if he had called plays, he's still a younger guy, and it's not like he's been around the boat for generations. Where I would like a veteran offensive mind just there to help him along the way, senior offensive assistant. And Brian brought it up in that article where he mentioned that he thinks that they could hire exactly that. There's obviously a variety of different paths that can go with that, but that's basic between them. If they could go Robinson, Cayley, a senior advisor coach in Covington, that's very basically like my dream.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think they need a veteran offensive mind. It's worked where that, like, It's not like not having one in other teams has been detrimental.
No, it's not that they can't be successful. I'm just saying in a perfect world, ideally, I'd like someone older and a veteran guy there.
But what older veteran guy is going to tell Zach Robinson how to coordinate an offense when he's coming from the Sean McVay system? Like, I don't know if I would want that. I don't know if I would want an older veteran coach who doesn't come from the McVay Shanahan tree, like advising somebody who's from that tree on how to run the offense.
It goes beyond like how to run the offense. It goes beyond into just being in charge of an offense, running meetings, running game plans and all that type of stuff. Someone who's done it with the experience before, it can be beneficial. And that's why I don't know if McDaniels would fit because they do have two completely different schemes. But if you could bring in a veteran coach that, I'm trying to think of some off the top of my head.
Adam
that
Gase?
could just who?
Adam Gase?
I don't think he would fit with Gerard, but so I guess.
So, but let me ask you this question: if you bring in Robinson to run your offense, what's the concern with? Like, what are you worried about if there's no veteran offensive mind whispering in his ear on how to run a meeting?
It's not that whether I think he won't be successful or not. Like, it's just in any scenario, if you're new to a job, it would be beneficial to have someone who's done it before.
Then what? That just screams redundancy. What's the point of hiring somebody who's already been an offensive coordinator to be an offensive coordinator's mentor behind the scenes?
The same reason it happens constantly, where they have veteran senior offensive assistants working with the young OCs. It happens most teams don't you don't see it around the league unless you actually go and look at the staffs. But I would say if you looked at the average young OC in this league, there's probably a veteran offensive assistant that's been around the block for years. And again, it goes well beyond just learning how to run a team or an offense or play calling and all that type of stuff. It goes so far beyond that. It's being in charge of an entire offense and being in charge of, in this scenario, and this is a little bit why I think it's beneficial, is Mayo doesn't have experience running an offense. You know what I mean? I don't think they need a defensive veteran coach because they have Mayo leading the charge there over Covington. But with Mayo being a brand new head coach and being a defensive guy, I would certainly like a veteran guy there that can help him along the way.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, it's again, it's not that I think Robinson will be bad or anything like that if he doesn't. But I would like them to certainly bring in some guys with experience, long-term experience. I forget his name off the top of my head. What's his Greg Olson, not the tight end. The coach.
The other Greg Olson.
Yeah, so he was the quarterbacks coach in Seattle this year. Obviously, they're looking at a new offense. I don't know, depending on their coach, but he's a former coordinator. He's been around for years. He's a guy that's not so much to be a senior advisor, I guess, but maybe even if he was the QB coach, and not give that title to Zach Robinson. That's a lower end example of something that I'd be interested in. Just basically, I would, in a perfect world, just want someone with experience that's been around for a handful of years to help, because Mayo's never done this before. as a head coach, and certainly doesn't have the offensive experience.
Right. That's fair. Give you that.
But yeah, I mean I think so. We're all kind of in unison. Jared, did you say Covington was your DC choice?
Yes, it's been Covington from the very beginning.
So we're all in unison, actually, which is kind of surprising. Might be the first time in Raise the Banner history.
Hey, go buy a lottery. Go buy a lottery ticket.
Yeah.
Well, my
agree.
dream scenario was Steve Wilkes, but that was just me saying, "Oh, wouldn't it be crazy?" But
Where
Covington,
is he right now? Is he in San Francisco?
San Francisco's defensive coordinator.
Yeah. So getting a lateral move. Yeah. So I mean that's kind of my ideal. I would love to get Nick Caley here as a pass game guy, and like I mentioned to you guys a couple days ago, is basically say, hey, like if Robinson comes here and is successful, he's going to get an offer in a couple of years. Maybe hell, you could say even next year, and then this will be your job. You'll be the next, OC, and then you'll be in line to take that job. The argument of why Keeley might not take it is if Robinson leaves, well, who's getting the pass game coordinator job in LA? Is it worth it then? Because you could just take that job. But at the same time, it doesn't seem like Mike LaFleur is leaving LA as the OC anytime soon.
Bro, listen to me. That dude is trash as an offensive coordinator.
Yeah, so that's why, I think Robinson and Caley need to look at it and say the McVay system. Usually you just trickle your way up until you're OC, and then you get a head coaching job. LaFleur came back. He took a lateral. He got fired in New York, and he took a lateral move to LA. So I don't think he's going to be going anywhere anytime soon. So if that's the case, the LA, the Rams McVay OC job might be unavailable for the next, short-term foreseeable future. So if you're Robinson and even Caley, the fast track to OC might be would be probably outside of LA. So that would be my biggest sell to Caley, is he could more than likely be. I wouldn't say more than likely, because Robinson could come here and suck, or the rookie could suck, but Robinson gets a head coaching job in a year or two, and then it's Caley's turn, and we go from there. To finish up on top of that, they could bring a guy or two from LA underneath them too, if Robinson wants, and try to start creating essentially a tree of offensive talent on the coaching staff. That's my only worry about Robinson, is if he's going to come here, leave in 2 years, and then what do we do at that point? So I mean, I would really like if Nick Caley can follow him here.
So I was just looking it up. I haven't seen any names for offensive coordinator that have interviewed here besides Robinson, Pitcher, and
Waldron.
Nick who? Waldron and Caley, right? Have they? And I don't know if I'm missing it. Have they interviewed a minority candidate to fulfill the Rooney Rule obligation for offensive coordinator?
No, that's what I was saying earlier. Like they need to interview one. So that's why I said maybe Brian Johnson from Philly, or Eric Bieniemy. Obviously, he's in Washington. He interviewed for the Washington head coaching job, but I don't know if that's very likely.
Yeah. Maybe we don't find out about offensive coordinator as soon as defensive coordinator.
I think we'll get Covington. I think Covington will get the job within the next day or two. You could see a special teamer job get hired within the next couple days. I think OC, you're probably looking at maybe the weekend or early next week.
Yeah, I was going to say end of this week, early next week. Because unless it comes out tomorrow that they have an immediate interview with a minority candidate, they haven't fulfilled their Rooney Rule obligation yet.
Yeah, well, in that, and there's a lot of moving parts here. Like, depending on when where Ben Johnson goes, you got to decide. Well, who's he going to want as his OC? Like, there's a lot of moving parts. Arthur Smith supposedly has interest from quote 7 teams.
I hope the Patriots aren't one of them.
I don't know if the Patriots are one of them or not, but there's only so many OC jobs available, so 7 is a lot. It could be one of them, but I mean, we're still waiting.
He's not a bad play caller. He's really not. It's just he's not a good head coach.
Yeah. I mean, he was good. He was good in Tennessee.
Yeah, but they also had A.J. Brown, Jonnu's. Oh God, and they had.
He's not happy with me.
Jonnu's insanity run that he went on.
Yeah. Again, we're still early into the offseason, and we'll finish it up here, but we're still early into the offseason, and things, it's tough to know what to expect, but, right now they're doing exactly what we could have hoped for in what looks like could be the path, where it's Robinson and Covington. I'm a big, big fan of Covington. I think he could be a really good DC, and I think he'll get a head coaching job within the next few years after he becomes the DC here. But either way, like I said, I think they're on the right path, and it's just a matter of we'll see how things play out. And then once they pick that OC, we'll get a little bit better idea of who they could be now, targeting in free agency or in the draft. And that will be. I've tried not to get myself invested into the draft just yet. By this point last year, Ben and I were already sending each other mock drafts every other day.
Don't worry. That'll get started soon enough.
But all right,
we'll have
boys,
to do one for this podcast.
Yeah, we'll certainly be doing some, as we get closer in prep. But any final words for the audience? Anything Boston related?
Not really. He'll never see this or hear this or anything like that. But just prayers go out to Doug Kyatt and his family. They lost their little daughter Haley over this weekend. She was 2 years old. So I don't know if there's a GoFundMe or anything like that set up to help out.
There is.
There is,
yes.
There is,
absolutely, yeah. And I think he posted her obituary earlier today.
So,
obviously,
not saying you have to, but anything helps the family. So,
yeah, absolutely. Ben, any final words?
No. Reiterate JR's point. Thoughts go out to Doug and his family. Obviously, tough in any situation, but hits a little bit hard. I have 2 young kids, so hits a little bit harder. Boston sports wise, Celtics and Bruins are trending in the right direction. We've got excitement around the Pats. Hopefully next time we're on here, we're talking about a couple new coordinators and how we think the offense is going to shape up. The offseason countdown is underway. We've got less than 2 months until legal tampering, and the combine starts in like 4.5 weeks.
Legal tampering starts on my birthday this year.
It does, March 11th. Mm-hmm. So maybe an early birthday present for JR, and we can get some breaking news about Pat's.
T. Higgins of the Patriots will hit strongest drug if that's the first thing I see at noon on my birthday.
Maybe happy birthday to me. I expect him to be franchise tagged, but I'll hold out hope for you. But yeah, keep on keeping on, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So
as always,
we'll be back next week. Like you said, hopefully we'll have more than likely at least 1 or 2 out of the 3 coordinator positions filled. I would say we'll probably have MLB, maybe Red Sox news, but I at this point I don't know.
I doubt it.
The season might start in Montgomery, and Snell might not be signed for at this pace, but
it might be like a Schwarber thing. So
yeah. So
he'll sign on the flight to spring training.
Yeah, no, literally. But all right, at this point, we'll be back next week. Stay tuned and take care.
Have a good night, guys.